Fashion trends come and go, like boy bands, Dorito flavors, and international borders. And some pretty odd things have been considered haute couture in the past. Although you can't argue they wouldn't still turn heads if you sported them out for a night at Dave & Buster's. Today, we're giving you the beatdown on history's strangest beauty trends. But before we get all gussied up, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. Then let us know in the comments what other bizarre trends from the past you want to know about. For now, why don't you slip into your finest fineries? When we think of the Victorian era, it conjures up images of starched, bulky clothing, lots of black fabric, and showing as little skin as humanly possible. But underneath all those pounds of clothing lived probably the last thing you would ever expect: erotic piercings. Life is full of surprises, and the Victorians know how to throw a mean curveball. During a fleeting period in Victorian England, wealthy women actually pierced their nipples, and sometimes even included a chain linking the two together. These were presumably all the rage in the late Victorian thrash punk scene. Men would get in on the piercing action too, instructing their local tattoo shops to put a ring through their, let's just say it wasn't through their ears. This supposedly made it easier to comfortably wear the increasingly tight pants of the era. This type of piercing is known as the Prince Albert, and it is rumored the Victorian prince sported the look. Must have been a fan of the tobacco too. Today, people spend hundreds of dollars having their eyebrows shaped, trimmed, and sliced, all in the hopes of getting them on fleek. But to have your eyebrows on Greek would involve letting those bad boys grow out bushier than a plumber's mustache. In ancient Greece, the power brows of the time were women's unibrows and were considered a sign of intelligence and purity. If they weren't lucky enough to be blessed with an unbroken brow, women would use kohl pigment to draw one on, giving them that bold and beautiful look. If the 17th century was about anything, it was about large-scale military conflicts and ever-changing political structures the world over. But if the 17th century was about a second thing, it was cleavage fashion. Necklines took a plunge while breasts became one of the most prominent features for women to display. It was also around the same time that extreme paleness became a hot new trend. If your skin was pale, that meant you lived a wealthy lifestyle out of the sun, unlike the laborers of the time. So if a woman of the time wanted that one-two punch of cleavage and translucent skin, they would often resort to drawing blue veins on their chests to mimic the trend. And the busty vampires of the time rejoiced. Those fat cats at Big Toothpaste would have you believe that a pearly white smile is the only acceptable kind of smile to flash. If 9 out of 10 dentists agree on what color your grin should be, that 10th dentist might just be from ancient Japan. For thousands of years, Japanese women would blacken their teeth after marriage. And it wasn't a fun wedding night prank. The blackened teeth were a symbol of beauty and a commitment of marriage. The trend continued through the 19th century, so maybe there was something to it. Although these days, most people are okay with just getting a ring. Throughout history, society has always given special attention to ladies' gams. But back in the Middle Ages, all the way up to around the 18th century, all the focus was on men's calves. If it didn't look like you had a mid-sized canoe strapped to the back of your shins, you were nobody. Back then, men wore stockings to show off their well-shaped, absolutely yoked calves. Some even stuffed padding inside their stockings to make sure they measured up. King Henry VIII was particularly well known for having excellent calves. He may have chewed through his wives like a lawnmower, but the man never skipped leg day. Up until the 18th century, women's faces would be bare, and the pale skin look was all the rage. But the 1700s ushered in a new age of heavy makeup use. Part of this rouge revolution were beauty patches, small pieces of fabric that could be adhered to the face to cover up blemishes or wounds. But in the 18th century, they were fashion accessories which came in shapes such as stars, circles, squares, and SpongeBob, probably. Their placement on the face had significance as well. For example, if someone had a beauty patch near their mouth, that meant they were a bit flirty. One on the right cheek meant the woman in question was married. Saying someone is long in the tooth is an unkind way of saying they're getting older. And that kind of balderdash would not fly during the Renaissance, where short teeth were the bee's knees. This distinction comes from a list of the 30 very specific traits of the Renaissance which were needed to consider a woman beautiful. Amongst the traits such as long legs, wide hips, and a narrow waist, it seems women also needed to pay special attention to their gums. Gummy smiles with tiny teeth were just about the sexiest thing a woman could have, along with 29 other very specific beauty standards. Thankfully, today we've moved beyond such things. Foot binding was perhaps one of the most infamous forms of body modifications. It involves tightly wrapping the feet of young girls in order to change their shape and size, because small feet were in. The practice's origins in China are unknown. However, historians agree it was prevalent amongst the wives and daughters of nobles around the 13th century and spread from there. Foot binding usually begins when a girl is 5 to 7 years old and continues as she grows. Binding would break the bones in the feet, causing the sole to bend down to meet the toes, while the toes themselves bent under the foot in sort of a grotesque, mushy hook. You may unclench your own feet at this time. Beginning around 1000 BCE, ancient Mayans started the practice of modifying the skulls of their infants. And you thought you had it rough when your mom wouldn't let you watch Terminator 2. Skull shaping is accomplished by strapping a board or other various implements to a child's head as they grow, forcing the skull to reshape itself. This was done on both male and female children as a sign of ornamental beauty rather than social standing. Turns out, pointy heads were just highly desirable commodities at the time. It wasn't just a Maya thing either. There are other groups around the world who also took part in head molding, such as the Huns, Hawaiians, Tahitians, Incas, and the Chinook and Choctaw tribes in North America. The Chinese have a storied history of long nails. The significance of long fingernails can be traced all the way back to around 400 BCE, where both men and women were known to let their nails air out a bit. People from the Qing dynasty would grow nails 8 to 10 inches long. Some women even wore special gold nail guards to protect these lengthy manicures. Long fingernails were a signifier of wealth and meant you didn't work in the fields or other places where your elaborate nails could get chipped. They instead relied on servants to dress them, feed them, and beat that really hard level in Mario Brothers. From the times of ancient Egypt all the way up to modern cinema, long, luscious eyelashes have been considered a hallmark of feminine beauty. But during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, eyelashes' association with beauty caused them to become symbols of over-sexuality. To dissociate themselves from this stereotype, women during the Dark Ages opted for less dark lashes, which eventually led to lashes being erased altogether. Women would often painfully remove their eyelashes completely, and eventually, a fresh face devoid of lashes became en vogue. During the nylon shortages of World War II, the pantyhose industry took a major hit. With the expectation being that women's legs should be shiny and tan, dozens of paint products were used to mimic the look of that precious nylon. Leg painting products hit the shelves and, according to a 1942 edition of Life magazine, were indistinguishable from the real thing when applied correctly. However, if you didn't want to spend big bucks on arts and crafts for your legs, you could basically use whatever was found around the house. Some women even painted their legs with gravy to give them that shiny and mouth-watering southern fried nylon look. KF chic. Anyone can have brown or blonde eyebrows, but the women of ancient China were on a whole different level. Ancient Chinese women loved to get creative with their eyebrows, painting them on with black, blue, or even green grease, and shaping them into whatever was the trend at the time. For instance, during the Han Dynasty, sharply pointed Vulcan eyebrows were the style. Another brow trend was called sorrow brows, where the eyebrows were shaped upward in the middle in an expression of sadness, as if the corner store just ran out of eyebrow grease. If you study any painting of the Renaissance, you may start asking yourself, why is every woman's head gigantic? Was it something in the water? No. The reality is, large curved foreheads were an important indicator of a woman's beauty back then. Men just love those thick, curvy heads. Women with smaller hairlines would pluck or shave the front of their heads to increase the size of their foreheads, to turn them into a 5-head, 6-head, or even the fabled 7-head. Fashion models of the 20th and 21st centuries have been known to starve themselves to accomplish the gaunt, high cheekbone look of today's fashion scene. Too bad they weren't around in 618 to 907 CE during the Chinese Tang Dynasty. They wouldn't have felt pressured to count a single calorie, since big, round faces were just about the most desirable look you could get. Women with plump figures, round faces, big cheeks, and wide foreheads were considered the most attractive people of the time. Corsets were popular during the Edwardian era, but this painful practice caused many to worry that the tight, constricting underwear would hinder a woman's breathing and squish the internal organs like a tube of toothpaste. To combat this, the S-bend corset was invented. This eased up the pressure on a woman's waist, and instead threw the hips and back at an exaggerated angle. It gave the wearer the look of a bustle, without all those extra layers. But the revolutionary corset was not without its flaws. It would bend the wearer's spine into unnatural positions, which would cause an exaggerated sway while walking. These new and improved corsets could inflict lasting damage to the owner's posture, but would also make you a formidable figure in competitive limbo. Sounds like a fair trade.